Well, thank you all for being here. Lolita, Ruth, Wendy. Thank you for Bright Spot. It's a bright spot for me. I look forward to this all week. The dog could care less, but I'm into it. Well, maybe we should get started then. Thank you all for being here. We're going to show a video just like we always do. It's from Sicily, and then I'm going to come back on the other side, like they say in real TV, and with the dog hairs that are still flying around. Sorry, buddy. And tell you about it. So let's roll the video. One of the coolest things I've found about writing historical fiction is the history, but also that can present a challenge. Because if you're writing a book set in the 1800s in Sicily, you have to find the 1800s in Sicily, or as close as you can get. And I think we kind of found it, because we're looking inland in southern Sicily, inland, right? Not a fishing village, but more a farming town, a typical community. I want to understand something about village life, and you see that's very much at the heart of the novel, and that's what these videos are. So we found this very small town. It's called San Biagio del Platani, and it is on a little tiny river. And here is a very, I think in many ways, it's sort of stop time and kind of typical. You know, in fact, if you notice first, this house, just the scale alone tells you so much about its vintage. And also, this is original tufa. Here, you can see it with white with calcium. This is all from the surrounding region. When you drive through here, it's hilly and mountainous and beautiful, and there's olive groves, and there's pistachio, and there's prickly pear. And it's really remarkable. But you can also see huge rocks, and you'll see the pictures on the website. Calcium. And so in those days, how they made original, they didn't have mortar and they didn't have cement to make concrete. So they got the calcium and they ground it and they mix it into a paste, and then they fire it for days. And then it becomes like a calcium paste, which is kind of used as mortar. And you can imagine in the novel, this is, where the people would have lived. And the village life, this town is so illustrative, because it's like Bagheria, if you take a look at our Bagheria video. Because here's the town, right? Small street, houses close together, the row houses. And at the bottom, by the way, is the bakery. It's a modern bakery, so we're not taking you there today, but it's a typical bakery. And you can see the people collecting, the women getting their morning bread, everybody exchanging gossip. Because the moms and the women are the core of the family and the family life, and they bring home the bread. And at the other end of the street, this is just like Bagheria, is that it ends in this beautiful church. And look at the stone. I mean, you can see its vintage, you can see how old it is, and interestingly also how solid. It's really remarkable. And I just want to take you around the side, because if you look closely, first of all, you can see little details like this. This might have been a hitching post, where a horse gets tied up right outside. And also when you go around the side, you see this tiny little alley, and you can just imagine what it's like. Oh yes, and here's plant life growing, right? And come around the side, and you see tiny little window at the top. And we're guessing that this must have been a kitchen, because you can see there's a hole here, maybe for the oven, exhaust, and holders for stovepipe, because at the very top is the top of the stovepipe. So it's kind of cool. This little window, this little back alley, more houses like this, of this scale, some more modern than others. But I think I found one that is really, let's go down here. You can kind of see. The street changes. You obviously see the changes that are made over time. Well, you can see the 1800s, maybe even before, in this rock, in the construction of this house. And it's charming. And that's the kind of notion I want you to think about when you're reading the novel. I hope I described it well enough, but I also wanted to take you to visit it. I feel very lucky that I got to visit it, and now you did too. So I'm going to tell you sort of what my point was. So that was me in Sicily, and I was in this town. But I don't even want to focus on the town for a minute because I sort of want to take you back for a minute. We're talking about loyalty, which is my second historical fiction that's coming out in March. Now it's set in Sicily. And so what these things are a little bit about, let's see, I can hear you. Good, Sally, yay. So the idea is this, that I wanted to take you behind the book into the different regions that the characters are from in the novel. There's four main characters, and we talked about this before. Two are from Palermo, and we saw that in a previous video, what Palermo is like, and in particular, the Concadoro, which is the golden bowl where the lemons are from and grown. It's a very lush region. And then last week we went, if you remember, to Porticello. If you don't know, believe me, I'm going to tell you until you're blue in the face, right? You'll be, please shut up about Porticello. But Porticello was really cool. It is a fishing village right near Palermo. I took you through it so you could see how life, because what you're trying to do is imagine life in the 1800s, which is when the novel is set, which is actually the time the mafia rose in Sicily. Okay, so that's what we're trying to understand, and also the lives of these fictional characters. So there's a fishing village, and you could see, and we talked about how in a fishing village, everybody fishes. That's how they live, because you have to eke out a living. And if you live in a fishing village, you can at least eat and you can sell fish to each other. And the big problem in fishing villages is the danger, the sea, storm, all kinds of stuff like that. But the final region I wanted to focus on, and that's what this little town is like. That's why it doesn't matter if you could hear it or not, because you could see it. And I have some pictures here I'm going to show you. But really, most of Sicily is these inland villages that are, most of them, on the top of mountains. And it is a remarkable thing. And so I wanted to find a typical one. And the amazing thing is when you walk around Sicily or drive around Sicily, you will find them because they are aplenty. And they're very different from the lush, luxuriant, irrigated part of around Palermo, where I told you lemons are grown, because the ground there around these places is actually very dry. It looks like this. It is not easy to cultivate. You hear that sound? That's the dog making the dog nest that they always make, because God forbid they actually put their ass down in the sea. Boone, stop. Don't embarrass mommy on her video. Okay, so here's what the town looks like. Outside the town, it's very, very dry. It is hard to farm there. The town itself, I was like, well, gee, I want to kind of see what towns were like in the 1800s. The amazing thing is, just like that town you saw in the video, whether you heard it or not, parts of it look like the 1800s. Look at this from a different town. This can't be that much different. It's the same type of stone. It's got this ancient, 200 years old. Could it be? Yeah, it could be. Wooden door. It looks like this. When you walk through any one of these inland towns, there'll be like a little castle type thing. This is called a crenellated roof. I learned that little castle thing, like the rook at a chess game. And you'll see a building this old next to a drugstore. These towns are, to a certain extent, stop time. And that's what's so cool when you're me and you have to write a book that's historical, because you can walk through the history, because in these towns, the history is still alive. For example, here's something interesting. I just love houses. I mean, I'm like, my pornography is like houses, right? I look at the one ads, I look at Zillow. I love my house. I'm not going anywhere, but I can't help it. So then I look at the details, this is called a pot-bellied balcony. Do you see it? And it's called that because I can't even hold them. I'm such an idiot. Here you go. Well, you see how the bottom of the railing kind of sticks out. This would be like me after Thanksgiving dinner, it goes out at the bottom. It's very characteristic of Sicily, and it was characteristic in the 1800s too. And here and there you'll find restored ones, but this one looks like it's been around a really long time. And all of these inland towns tend to be laid out the same way, as you saw on the video, where there's basically, it's a different town, but there's a main street, and this looks kind of big, but it really isn't. This is the whole damn town. At one end will be a church, at the other end will be a beautiful estate of a noble person. And people will promenade on the street and do their shopping on the street. And in this one, it's so interesting. We'll talk about it in a later video on another day. But you'll see that's all men on the street. It's really after church on a Sunday, the women, this is modern day. This is like, I think a year ago in Sicily. If you're watching White Lotus, it's just like that. And there's a street, and the men after church all get out and talk, and they basically talk to each other all day. And women are in these little towns and in the houses making Sunday dinner. It's hard to believe that that's still true, but it is. And so all of that is so interesting. And I want to take a second because I don't know if you heard the audio, and I'll tell you why this matters. This is a sneak peek into my research methods. I don't know how other writers do it, but this is for me. And I think you'll get the idea when you read Loyalty, that I go to Sicily because I can't imagine writing about Sicily without having been there, and I'd never been there before. But when you go, you only have, if you're me, you don't really have a great idea about the story. Are you surprised? Like, I mean, the video doesn't work. My hair's looking weird. My gray is showing. This looks funky. I don't always plan everything in advance, which is why I'm divorced twice. I'm fine with that, frankly. What this means for present purposes is that when I go to Sicily, I don't really know what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for anything. I just want to soak it in. I want to get the vibe. I want to see what it feels like. And so when I go into these small towns like the one in the video or the one I just showed you, and I see that to make a living, you have to go outside the town and farm these really dry lands. I go, wow, what kind of person can earn a living in a village like that? And conversely, what does that terrain do to form the character of a person who lives there? Well, let's think about that. If it isn't easy to make a living, you have to be inventive. You have to be strong. You have to be resilient. You have to be hardy. You have to be sturdy. You have to be able to really endure hardship. I don't know if any of these pictures show you, but this one will show you. There is so much up and down. It's so mountainous there. These towns are on the top of a mountain. The streets zigzag all the way up. It would be a 20-minute straight up, but it's an hour walk. Even the town that you saw was the grade is very, very steep. You can see this even. This is a steep grade. These are older men, but they're walking around like it's not a problem because the terrain forms their character. It makes them resilient. It's no excuses time. And so what's so cool about that for us to talk about, I say us, even though it's me only talking nonstop, I'm so sorry. But what's cool about that is an interesting idea for people who love books like you guys, which is that you go, where do the characters come from? Well, they come from the land. They are formed by the land. So I had to have a book, as I do in Loyalty, which is populated by really strong characters. The men are strong, and so are the women. Maybe they're not allowed outside as much. Their lives are much more interior in the novel. You'll see that. But the strength and the resilience and their ability to work hard is formed by the conditions they grow up under, that they live under, that they raise families and children under. And that's the zest and the life force that I wanted in this book. That is what it means to be Sicilian. And I didn't really get it until I was there and I walked around exhausted. And then there were little details. I'll add one little detail and then I'll move on. I don't know if you could see the video, but here's me. I'm like a freak because since I love house porn, I'm touching the stone on these buildings. I'm trying to figure out where the stovepipe was. I learned that it's a calcium that's in the stone. I'm looking at the white. One of the things I noticed in the video, and I don't know if you saw it, is a hitching post. I go, that's interesting because I have a pony. Every little girl should have a pony, even when you're 67. And I was like, that's interesting. I don't know if it matters. It's like I say, when I go there, I don't know what facts I'm going to use. These are all details. None of it will make it into the book, probably, but it will inform everything and keep it authentically Sicilian and authentically true, except that in Loyalty, and I'm not giving anything away because I won't, but in the first chapter of Loyalty, I think it's fair to say to you that it begins with the kidnapping of a little boy. And he's a very rich little boy, and he's being kidnapped. And there's a bad guy who's doing the kidnapping. And so here I am. I come back from Sicily, I'm going to write the first chapter. Do I have any idea? No, not really. But I know that the kidnapping is going to occur on the Quattro Conti, which is in the first video we talked about, right in the heart of Palermo, right at the heart of this very important parade. And I'm a bad guy's going to do it. Then I say to myself, all right, this is me typing. Well, actually, this is me typing. I go, well, how is the bad guy going to get away with the kid? And I said, well, he'll be on a horse. He'll jump on the horse with the kid. He's got a cape. Da-da! He goes off. He jumps away. He rides the horse. Then I go, wait a minute. Where was the horse? Now I think about you guys. And even though I joke around these things, I think about you all the time. Because I want to write a really wonderful novel, and I want you with it the whole time, and particularly Loyalty, because it moves really fast. It starts with that kidnapping, and if I can just say, it never lets up in terms of action. And I thought to myself, well, Lisa, you have to answer the question the reader might be wondering. Where did this horse come from? He doesn't just appear. And by the way, well, if the bad guy had his horse somewhere, his horse would have to be tied up somewhere. And then I'm sitting there in my house outside Philly going, where would the horse be tied up? And I went, Lisa, you saw it. It was the hitching post. And when you start to find a hitching post in Sicily, in Palermo, or in all these small towns, you start noticing them everywhere because they're still there. They're embedded in the stone. Well, that's where in the 1800s and the 1700s, and probably before that, people riding horses around tied them up to the hitching post. And I'm like, this is why you went to Sicily. And this is the real point, that you don't really know what will inform your novel. There'll be details like a hitching post that you will know is rock solid history because you saw it with your own eyes, and nobody can talk me out of what I see. But you also get something much bigger, which is what I said before. What is the Sicilian character? And how can it give rise to the characters in my novel? How can it inform them? How can it make them authentically Sicilian? How will it ring true not only to Sicilians, but people all around the world where it's published? And most of all, to people like you who want to learn about Sicily, but will not get the chance that I did, and may not get the chance to go there. And nobody gets a chance to go there in the 1800s, but I have to make that come alive. And so that's what tonight is about, trying to make the inland village, the typical Sicilian village, come to life. I hope it does in Eternal. And that's what I said on the video without the glitchiness. Now, moving on. This is the part of the show where I read you a wonderful blurb, which is a comment that some wonderful other author who I'll tell you about in a minute, her name is Helene Wecker. I got an early copy of Loyalty to her, and she loved it, which was so nice. And I'll tell you why I'm so honored by that in a moment. I'll read you what she said in full. You saw the brief comment there. It said in the video, it says, she said, tautly plotted, brimming with detail. Who knew? Maybe she knew about the hitching post, maybe she didn't. Loyalty takes us through the streets of 19th century Sicily. That's what I was trying to do. To witness the birth of the modern mafia. Yes, girl! Scottolini fills her tale with a richly varied cast, gathering them into a web of intrigue as the book races towards its heart-stopping finish. A delight. Oh my God. Thank you, Helene. That is it. I was so happy when I got that, because I was like, that's just what I was going for. She understood. Now I want to tell you some great things about Helene, because I know you guys are serious readers, and I always like to recommend new authors to you. Now, I've recommended people like Nelson DeMille and Daniel Silva, and they're awesome, and you may know their names. And last night we talked about a new, and I don't want to say younger, but an up-and-coming author named Jennifer Rosner, who's terrific. But tonight I want to talk about Helene Wecker. Now, I'm like you, right? I go in a bookstore. I look around at the books. I'm like, this looks interesting. It's called The Golem and the Jinni. I like the cover. It's a historical fiction. I love historical fiction. I've always read it my whole life. I go, oh, it's set in New York. I don't really know what a golem is. And I don't really know what a jinni is. But I pick it up just randomly. Like, how many books do you buy, take out of the library, borrow? You have stacks all over, right? As you know, this is just my signed pile. I collect books. I love books. I take this book home and I was blown away. I think this is one of the best novels of historical fiction I have ever read. And I will tell you why. And this is her first novel. Her second one is a follow up. But let me talk about this one briefly. It's called The Golem and the Jinni. What's a golem? A golem is a figure of a woman made of clay. It's inanimate. Wow. She comes to life in the novel. I'm reading this going, I never read anything like this. I don't know. I don't even know what's going to happen next. But then you find out it takes place in the 1890s in New York City. That's interesting to me. What is a golem going to do there? Oh, I don't know. Guess who well, I'm not going to give anything away, but there's a jinni. What's a jinni? A jinni is what we call a genie, like the old magic lamp, or magic lamp. She's Jewish. He's Arab. That's interesting. They're from different times and places. That's interesting. And I try to write original stuff. I try to do something different. That's why I'm so, talk about loyalty. I feel so loyal to you because you're so loyal to me. You have gone with me from Rosado to funny books to the standalones. And by the way, Rosado's coming back, so don't stress. But I like to do something different. Loyalty, as much as I loved Eternal, I think loyalty is different. They're different, but they're also terrific. And I give credit. I do a little, not a rating system, but I give credit to an author like Colleen Wecker, who's really going to do something really different, really her own. And I thought this was a really fascinating, original, fresh, and I learned about golems and jinnies. And now I know about golems and jinnies, so I can tell you, I mean, that's cool. And to me, that's what reading's about. You know, reading not only, I think it should expand your horizon. Historical fiction does that in spades. You're going to learn about Sicily. You're going to learn about New York. You're going to learn about the mafia. You're going to learn about lemons and convents and how they make pastries and where the hitching posts are in Palermo. You're going to learn from historical fiction, but also the root thing. Thank you, Cheryl, likes the Rosado books. The root thing that you learn when you read is empathy. You enter someone else's consciousness and soul. And that's why I read. And I think that's why you read too. And I think that's why people who read have more empathy than other people and also are adorable. So that's what I think. I'm very, very grateful you came tonight. I hope I said all the things I was supposed to say. Next week, hopefully we'll have the glitches worked out, so don't worry. But thank you very, very much for coming. Boone thanks you. Kit thanks you. Peach thanks you. I appreciate you all very, very much. I love doing this and I hope you enjoy it too. And if you missed the video, it'll be on the website properly, so you'll be able to see it. But thank you very, very much again. I love you guys, and I'll see you next Monday night. Thank you very, very much, and stay well. And I appreciate you. That's the main thing. Thanks again for your loyalty.